Happy Sabbath. Happy day. So, we are going to share a little thing today, or this evening, or afternoon. And the topic that we are going to share, it is about the reform line of Moses. So, there are little things that I want to see from that line, and I want you to consider as I consider that things. So, that is what I'm going to talk about. So, before we go into the line of Moses, I want us to consider the line of Christ first, because I'm going to dwell in the line of Moses. And in that line, I'm going to take my time to show us something that to come to my mind yesterday, and I want us to consider it. So, in the line of Christ, we know that when we start reform lines, there are principles that govern each reform line, and by considering all those principles, then we should come up with a good structure based on the line that we have brought up to study. So in the line of Christ, we know that all the principles of reform line, there's a beginning and there's an ending. But the most important thing that we identify in the line is the message of the hour. And that message of the hour, there's a beginning point, and God gives that message, and the message do it work until the end of that message. So in the line of Christ, so as we all know that the whole reform line begins with the time of the end, and to those who are not aware of that, there are some characteristics that are governing the reform line. So I will not go into those characteristics and show to us what are they, but I will go direct to the point that I want us to consider in that line. So in the line of Christ, so I will draw a line, and I will not talk much about the beginning, but there are little points that I want to consider in the middle before the end. So we all know that the beginning of this line, it is 4 BC, which is time to be the time of the end. And we mark this to be a time of darkness. And then follow increase of knowledge. So this is a line that I want us to look at. So here we have the time then, which is 4 BC, and to many of us who doesn't know 4 BC, 4 BC was the time that Christ was born at that year. And we can find it, we can find the birth of Christ in the book of Luke chapter 1, and then in Matthew chapter 2. So, but in those verses, chapter 1 of Matthew and Luke chapter 2, we can't find this out 4 BC. But what we get in this year, or in these verses, it is the birth of Christ. So from here we have birth of Christ, but we don't have year in that verses. So what we did, we go back to the history and see in the history, then history will give us 4 BC. But Bible, the context of what we are reading cannot give us 4 BC. So that's the point that I want us to know about birth of Christ. So I will not read all verses, but I will point you to So as we know that we have a time in the birth of Christ, and The birth of Christ was the time of the end, and that message that came at the time of the end, that's a test, and that test, I want to mark that test before this time, before the time of the end. And this test I want to put to be the message that Zechariah has given about the birth of Messiah, about the coming of Messiah. And we will find this thing in the book of Luke chapter 1, but I will read some part in Luke chapter 1. Luke chapter 1 verse 63 to 79, but I cannot read all these verses, but I want to pick some point or one verse. So I want to read verse 74. It says, that He would grant unto us that we, being delivered out of the hand of our enemies, may serve Him without fear, in holiness and righteousness before Him all the days of our life. And thou, child, shall be called the prophet of the highest, for thou shalt go before the face of the Lord to prepare His way, to give knowledge of salvation unto His people by the remissions of their sins. So here we see that when we go back to verse 63, then we see that there's a prophecy, and there's someone that prophesies here, and there's someone that prophesies here is Zechariah. And Zechariah begin to speak all these words that we have read from, that I have begin from verse 74, but the real story begins from verse 63 up to 79. But the point that I'm picking, I want to make some point, but the story. So in the beginning, as we know that Gabriel came to Zechariah when he was ministering in the temple. But as he's ministering in the temple, so angel Gabriel came to him with a message about the birth of John. So in Luke chapter 1, when you begin to read verse 5 up to the end, then you see that an angel came to him with a message about the birth of John. But we see that Zechariah disbelieved the message, and he goes down. So from here until, so at this time period, Zechariah doesn't speak because an angel had let him down. So verse 67, at the time when John was born, and the elders came together to give a name to John, and the elders say that this child is going to be called Zechariah. But Elizabeth refused to be for that name to be given, and he gave the name to be John, and they have controversy that there's no such a name in our family. So they give a stick to Zechariah, and Zechariah wrote and named John. But immediately he called the name John in verse 3, and he has a writing table and wrote saying his name is John, and they marvel at all. And his mouth was open immediately, and his tongue loose, and he speaks and praised God. So from here we have seen that the tongue of the crier has been loose. So, and this story that we have seen from here, from the beginning, and then we see that these are births of John, and this birth of John, we understand that the difference between John and Jesus, it is how many? So here we have 6 months, and at this time period, 6 month period, here we have the Zechariah with a prophecy, and this prophecy about the nearness of Messiah. Because verse 76 says, and thou child shall be called the prophet of the highest, but for thou shalt go before the face of the Lord to prepare his way. So here we have John, and John is going to prepare the way before the Lord, and that Lord is Messiah. So here we have a prophecy, and the leadership of God's people of Israel has been warned. So when we come to the time of the end, so we have 6 months period of the time of the end, and when Jesus was born at this time period, there was a warning here for 6 months, so that they can understand what should take place in the near future. So that's about the time of the end of the birth of Christ, and the warning we have been given through the voice of the Zechariah. And I will not talk much about increase of knowledge, and we know that John the Baptist came in the same year 27, but we understand the difference from here to 6 months. So here we have 6. So here we have 6 months. And John came with a message calling the whole Israel for repentance. And that is Matthew chapter 3, verse 1 through 11. So I'm just making a summary. So, and as John preaching in this time period, Christ came to John the Baptist to be baptized, and then we get that one in Matthew chapter 3, verse 14 through 11, through 12. Sorry. That's different. So this baptism, so the point that I want us to see from here, the message about from the beginning toward the coming of Messiah or the coming of someone we have been prophesied by Zechariah, and other prophecy we have been given this time period about John, and then we see John coming in this history to prepare the way for the Messiah. So from here we see Messiah, Jesus being anointed at this time period, and then we have Messiah, and Messiah is anointing. So here anointed, and then before he was Jesus. So from here we have Jesus, and then this time period there's a boy that is speaking in heaven that recognizes that this is my beloved son. So here we have Christ being anointed, and the test of this history begins from this point. And we have said before that the same message that we have seen test God's people from here, the test begins already here. But when we came here, the people that had been given the message, they are passed by. They are bypassed. And we see the bypass, we can go to Desire of Ages, 47 paragraph 3. It says, not paragraph 3, but paragraph 1. Paragraph 1 says, Men know it not, but the tidings fill heaven with rejoicing, with a deep and more tender interest. The holy beings from the world of light are drawn to the earth. The whole world is brighter for his presence. Above the hill of Bethlehem are gathered an innumerable throngs of angels, the way they signal to declare the glad news to the world. Had the leaders in Israel been true to their trust, they may have shared the joy of heralding the birth of Jesus. But now they are passed by. So here we see that leadership has given have been given the message through the voice of John, but from here they have not taken heed the message and they are bypassed. Another group has been chosen to recognize the birth of Christ. So here we are bypassing of leadership, and the reason being they have not take heed the message which has been given to them through the voice of John, warning them about the coming of about the future event, which is the birth of Christ. So I'm just summarizing that reform line. So I want us to see next to be the arrival of second angel message, and we all know that in this movement we mark the arrival of second angel message at temple cleansings, and the temple cleansings, this 28 AD, and this Passover, and then we can say these are what? This atom. Are we together? So let us turn to John chapter 2, verse 13 through 17, so that we can see at the Passover and the temple cleansings. Verse 13 says, and the Jews' Passover was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem and found in the temple those that sold ox and sheep and doves and the changers of money sitting. And when he had made a scourge of a small court, he drove them out of the temple, and the sheep and the ox, and pour out the changers' money and overthrow the table. So I will jump to verse 16. And says unto them that sold dove, take these things hence, make not my father's house and house of merchandise. And his disciples remember that it was written, the zeal of thine house has eaten me up. So here we see that Christ came to the temple, and he found temple had been made as a business place, a place of merchandise. And he shares all those people out, and disciples remember that there's a fulfillment of these things, and that the book which has been fulfilled is Psalm 69, verse 9, which says, which they remember that the zeal of thine house has eaten me up. So that's what they remember, and they realize that there's a fulfillment of some prophecy from the book of prophet David. So that's arrival of second angel message, and I want us to go to the second to the empowerment of second angel message. And before we go to the empowerment of second angel message, I want us to see that some characteristics of second angel message when to arrive. In that is to mark tiring time and disappointment. And the disappointment that I want us to see from here is that at Passover, then we see next again, it was the prisons of John and his death. And then from here we see again, in John chapter 11, there's a friend of Christ who is called Lazarus, and Martha and Mary, they sent Jesus to come and heal Lazarus, but Christ delay or tiring. So we mark tiring time in this history, and I want us to understand that 28 and the tiring time that we're marking here is that they're separate years. This is 28 and this is 31. So we have 28 and 31, but we are making some point to connect with that one. So, second, here we see that the persons, Lazarus here, sleep according to the word of Christ, but in real sense, it's not alive. So I want us to take to another step so that we can see that from here we have prisons of John and his death, which is disappointment, connect with a second angel message, and then we see Christ tiring to come to Bethany to come and hail John. And this time here followed by the what? By the sleep of Lazarus. So here we have tiring and sleep, and the next waymark that we are going to look at, it is the empowerment of second angel message. And the second empowerment of second angel message, I wanted to see that this point here, which I'm marking to be arrival of empowerment of second angel message, it is a resurrection of Lazarus. And this is the beginning point, and there are some points that I want us to consider. So when Christ came to Bethany after the death of Lazarus, so there are some points when he came. So in Desire of Ages 534, paragraph 1 and 2. One and 2 says, paragraph 1 says, with the prophetic eye Christ saw the enmity of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. He knew that they were premeditating his death. He knew that some of those now apparently so sympathetic would soon close against themselves the door of hope and the gate of the city of God. A scene was about to take place in his humiliations and crucifixions that would result in the destruction of Jerusalem. And at that time, none would make lamentation for the dead. The retribution that was coming upon Jerusalem was plainly portrayed before him. He saw Jerusalem compassed by the Roman legions. He knew that many now, weeping for the Lazarus, who died in the siege of the city, and in their death there would be no hope. It was not only because of the sin before him that Christ wept. The weight of the griefs of ages was upon him. He saw the terrible effect of the transgression of God's law. He saw that in the history of the world, beginning with the death of Abel, the conflict between good and evil had been unceasing. Looking down the years to come, he saw the suffering and sorrow, tears and death that were to be the lot of man. His heart was pierced with the pains of the human family of all ages, and in all land the woes of the sinful race were heavy upon his soul, and the fountains of his tears was broken up as he longed to relieve all their distress. So when Christ came, in these two paragraphs, Ellen White give us there are things that are recognized from here. So there's a word he saw. Ellen White in these two paragraphs repeated 5 times, and this 5 times that he saw. And the thing that the part things he saw enmity of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Second, he saw Jerusalem compassed by the Roman legion. Third, he saw the history of the world, the conflict between good and evil. Fourth, he saw the suffering and sorrow, tears and death. And the fifth, he saw the terrible effect of the transgression of God's law. So here we have 5 saw where Christ that at this time period, there's something that Christ see in this time period before he resurrected Lazarus. And these 5 things I will not mark, but it is my concern to look into this. So Desire of Ages 536, paragraph 2. Paragraph 2. Just giving us the summary. It says, and when he thus had spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. His voice, clear and penetrating, pierced the ears of the dead. And as he speaks, divinity flies through humanity. In his face, which is lighted up by the glory of God, the people see the assurance of his power. Every eye is fastened on the entrance to the cave. Every ear is baying to catch the slightest sound with the intent and peaceful interest. All wait for the test of Christ's divinity. The evidence that is to substantiate is claimed to be the sons of God or to extinguish the hope forever. So, what I want us to consider from here, we see that Christ came into the place where Lazarus has been, and then from here we see that Christ cried with a loud voice. And this loud voice here, so when you go to Matthew 25, we see that there's a person cry with a loud voice to the virgin. And when you come to this time here, we see Christ cry with a loud voice to who? To a sleeping, to a dead person. And this dead person wake up from his death. So from here, I'm likening this Lazarus to a virgin who sleep when you go to Matthew 25. So the voice of Christ here represents the voice of a person in Matthew 25. And this one here mark the beginning of the empowerment of second angel message. So I'm marking the beginning here with the voice of Christ, and this work that Christ has done. Ellen White is still commenting on this. So let us go to the same book, 537, paragraph 1. That is 529, paragraph 1. It says, in his mercy, he purposed to give them one more evidence that he was the restorer, the one who alone could bring life and mortality to light. This was to be an evidence that the priest could not misinterpret. This was the reason of his delay in going to Bethany. This crowning miracle, the rising of Lazarus, was to set the seal of God on his work and on his claim to divinity. So we see that Ellen White commenting that this work of Christ, whereby he raised Lazarus, that was a crowning miracle. And second to it was set the seal of God upon his what? Upon his work. Five 537, paragraph 1. Desire of Ages, 537, paragraph 1. DA 537, paragraph 1, it says, men who witnessed the resurrection of Lazarus were led to believe on Jesus, but the attitude of the Pharisees against him was in testify they had rejected all less than evidence of his divinity. And they were only enraged at this new miracle. The dead had been raised in the full light of day, and before a crowd of witnesses, no artificers could explain away such evidence. For these bad reasons, the enmity of the priests grew deadliest. They were more than ever determined to put a stop to Christ's work. So we have seen from here that this work of Christ here was the evidence whereby there's no anyone that could misinterpret it. And then they see that in this work of Christ, they have a plan that it could stop, because the work of Christ still go ahead by raising a dead person in the full light of day and before a crown of witness. So there's no any explanation whereby you can turn or divert that event. But in this history, before this event, there's a miracle that Christ has given from here, but they divert all those story, all those miracles. They accuse Christ that Christ did all those miracles because of what? He's the chief of Beelzebub. But this miracle, they will never misinterpret that miracle. So what I want us to see from here, this miracle here that Christ has done, which is a crowning miracle, we said the seal of God upon his work, is going to be a focus of foreign in this history ahead. So from here up to other neck waymark, that's going to be some point. So what I want is, again in the same paragraph, to say that mighty miracle was the crowning evidence offered by God to man that he had sent his Son into the world for their salvation. It was a demonstration of divine power sufficient to convene every mind that was under the control of reason, enlightened conscience. So that miracle, Ellen White commented that it was offered by God to convene men, those who have reasons and conscience. So the next one is going to be a triumphal entry, and you can get this story in the book of Matthew 21, Mark 11, Luke 19. So I will not read all those chapters, and what I will read is a great controversy 367 paragraph 2, GC 67 paragraph 2. GC 367 paragraph 2. It says, it's in the middle of the paragraph. The people intimidated by the threat of the priests and rulers ceased their joyful proclamation as they entered the gate of Jerusalem. But the children in the temple court afterward took up the refrain, and waving their branches of palm, they cry, Hosanna to the Son of David. When the Pharisees, sorely displeased, said unto him, Hear thou what this says. Jesus answered, Ye never read, out of the mouths of babies suckling, thou hast perfected praise. As God wrote through children at the time of Christ's first advent, so he wrote through them in giving the message of his second advent. God's word must be fulfilled, that the proclamation of the Savior coming should be given to all people, tongues, and nations. So my point from here, Ellen White is giving us that there was a cry that going on when Christ came into Jerusalem, and this cry, it was Hosanna. Hosanna to the Son of David. Hosanna to the Son of David. And what I want us to consider from here, we have a voice from here, and this voice is not the voice of single person like the voice that we understand from here. That cry was giving a loud cry, calling Lazarus, but here we see that Hosanna with so many voices. So we have many voices. We have a single voice calling Lazarus from death, and we have many voices that cry Hosanna to the sons of David. So that's my point that I want to see from there. The same GC 402 paragraph 2. Paragraph 2. It says, there went with an unfailing power that moved the soul. There was no doubt, no questioning upon the occasion of Christ's triumphal entry into Jerusalem. The people who were assembled from all parts of the land to keep the peace flocked to the Mount of Olives, and others joined the throngs that were escorting Jesus. They caught the inspirations, they caught the inspiration of the hour and helped to swallow the shout, "Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord." In like manner, these unbelievers who flocked to the Adventist meeting, some from curiosity, some merely ridiculous, feel the convincing power attending the message, "Behold, the bridegroom cometh." So here, Ellen White confessed that Christ's triumphal entry with a midnight cry message. So the next event that I'm marking here is the Passover. And this Passover here, it is across in 31 AD. And this 14th day of the past month. But the resurrection of Lazarus and Christ's triumphal entry, this is the same month, but different date. Let's go to John chapter 19, verse 14. Verse 14 says, "And it was the preparation of the Passover, and about the 6th hour, and he says unto the Jews, Behold your king. But the crowd away with him, crucify him. Pilate says unto them, Shall I crucify your king? The chief priests answer, We have no king but Caesar." So the point that I want to speak from there, it was a condemnation whereby they condemned Christ to be crucified, and they're going to crucify Christ. So and verse 23 of the same chapter 19, "Then the soldiers, when they were crucified, Jesus took his garment and made four parts, to every soldier a part, and also his coat. And now the coat was without seam, woven from the top throughout. They said that, therefore among themselves, Let us not rend it, but cast it lot for it. Whose it shall be, that the scriptures may be fulfilled, which says, The part in my remnant among them, and for my venture they did cast lot. The thing thereof be the soldiers did." So the point I want to see from that point, I'm not going to give any comment on that, but it is the point whereby they crucify Christ and they take the garment of Christ and cast lot. So here we have crucifixion. And these crucifixions, we see disappointment come later, because Christ had a disciple, and this disciple, in this journey to Jerusalem, they were happy because they were hoping that Christ is going to be crowned as king, because they have that thought that Christ is a Messiah, is coming true in a literal kingdom. So CET 56, paragraph 1, to see the disappointment of disciple. CET page 56, paragraph 1. So our disappointment was not so great as that of the disciple. When the Son of Man rode triumphantly into Jerusalem, they expect him to be crowned king. The people flock from all the region about and cry, Hosanna to the sons of David. So here we see that they have been disappointed. And at the cross, Ellen White comments that there's something that happened on the cross in the Desire of Ages, not Desire of Ages, GC 430, paragraph 2. In connection with that cross, so cross, we see that Christ being crucified, there's disappointment. And then another point that I want to connect with that, and GC 430, paragraph 2. It is those who by faith follow Jesus in the great work of the atonement, who receive the benefit of his mediation in their behalf, while those who reject the light which bring to view this work of ministration are not benefited thereby. The Jews who rejected the light given at Christ's first advent and refused to believe on him as the Savior of the world could not receive pardon through him. When Jesus at his ascension entered by his own blood into the heavenly sanctuary to shed upon his disciples the blessing of his mediation, the Jews were left in total darkness to continue their useless sacrifice and offering. The ministration of type and shadows are ceased. That door which made men had formerly found access to God was no longer open. The Jews had refused to see him, and the only way whereby you could then be found through the administration of the sanctuary in heaven. Therefore they found no communion with God. To them the door was shut. They had no knowledge of Christ as the true sacrifice and the only mediator before God, and they should not receive the benefit of his mediation. So second thing that I want us to see from here, or third, we have crucifixion, disappointment. But at the cross we see that there are dispensations at the cross here. And this dispensation, so on this side, we have earthly sanctuary, and the door of earthly sanctuary closed. So here, Ellen White marked the closed door, or the door of earthly sanctuary. And other side, we have door open, the door of the heavenly sanctuary. So at cross we see three things. Two things: we see disappointment, and then at the same time we see that the short door, the door of the earthly sanctuary, and then the door of heavenly sanctuary is open. So this is what I want us to consider. And this line here, that when Ellen White comments that these are short door, so the same thing that you compare Christ for emperor entry with the Minar prime message in the Millerite history, and then you compare disappointment of disciple with the disappointment of Millerite. So here we have disappointment, but when you go to that history of Millerite, then you see the same scenario. In 1844, October 22nd, so here we have disappointment, and second we see that they change or dispensation from holy to the most holy place, and from here we have earthly to the heavenly. And that's the point that I want to see from here, to see the closed door at the cross to be the earthly and the sanctuary. So the next thing, the next event after the disappointment, so I'm putting Pentecost. Let's go to Acts chapter 2, verse 1 and 4. Acts chapter 2 verse 1 through 4 says, "And when the days of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place, and suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of a rushing mighty wind, and to fill all the house where they were sitting. And there appeared unto them a cloven tongues like as of fire, and it sat upon each of them, and they were all filled with the Holy Ghost, and began to speak with other tongue, and other Spirit gave them utterance. And there was dwelling at Jerusalem Jews devout men out of every nation under heaven." So here we see that there is descending of Holy Spirit. And then from here they're going to go outside. Decide they're going to go outside to people in Jerusalem, because they have heard the noise, and that noise, okay, verse 6, "And now when this was noise abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded, because that every man heard them speak in his own language." So the point that I wanted to consider from this history, based on how Ellen White approached this story of Christ from 4 BC, and then she compared this history with the Mennonite history. So when the way that she compared with the Mennonite history, she said that these are Mennonite cry. I hope that we heard that things. And then we see that disappointment, she connect with our what? With the 1844, October 22nd. And this one we understand that here there's a church door, and this church door was the church door of the holy place, and then the most holy place was open. But when we came here, with the comparison that she have made, she connect with the earthly, with the heavenly, holy with the most holy. So from here, the next event, when you go to the history, or Mennonite history, that we have seen, I'm putting 1863 from here, and from 1863, we all understand that history. And I know that many of us, or some of us, doesn't know this. But I'm marking this to those who know. But I want us to see that based on comparison that she had made, this Passover is a closed door. And then the next event that we have seen from here, it is our Pentecost. And the point, so this Pentecost here, I'm marking it to be like a second coming based on this. And I will explain why I'm marking that one to be a second coming afterward. So, and I want to go to the line of Moses, because now we have seen that Mennonite cry, she compare October 22nd with our Passover, and then the next event that I put before there is the Pentecost. And I came here to see Pentecost before I go to line of Moses, because of this Pentecost in connection with the Passover, so that when I go there later, then it will be easier for us to consider which point that I want us to understand. So in the line of Moses, I will not go into the detail like the way that I went through this the line of Christ, but I want to show the ending of that line. And that ending of that line, so we have seen that the story of Christ has been connected with the language of there are some word or some language of Matthew 25, whereby we see that sleep, and then loud voice, and then voices, and then we see disappointment or shut door at Passover. And the same thing that I'm going to see in the line, and I'm going to see in the line of Moses, the same language of a voice calling a sleeping person or a dead person in the same story of Moses. So I will put the story of Moses up here. What?
It's small.
It is small. Sorry. Yeah. So the line below here is the line of Moses, and in the line of Moses, it have the same similar characteristic with the line of Christ, and so here these are births of Moses, and births of Moses we can find in a book of Exodus. I want to give some reference, but my focus will not be in the beginning here, but my focus will be at the end here. And I want to see that at the end, I want to compare Pentecost with Pentecost. So, and Ellen White is going to connect this, but I'm going to connect this Pentecost with Pentecost based on the reference that Ellen White has given us in her writing. Let's go to Exodus chapter 2. Exodus chapter 2 verse 1. And there went a man of the house of Levi and took to wife a daughter of a Levi, and the woman conceived and bare a son, and when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. So here we have a birth of Moses, and this birth of Moses will mark to be the time of the end. But not only that, in Exodus chapter 2, but when you go back to Exodus chapter 12, chapter 1, not 12, verse 15 through 19, you see that in these verses, from verse 15 it says, and the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew wife, of which the name of the one was Shipra, and the name of the other For. And he said, when ye do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew woman, and see them upon the stool, if it will be a son, then ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then shall live. But the wife feared God, and did not other kings of Egypt commanded them, but served the children, the men children. So from here, before the birth of Moses, so we see the same thing. There's a test that's going on before the birth of Moses, and we see that midwife. But we see that they fear God. So, birth of Moses, and then we see that there's some characteristics we connect with the time of the end, and in the time that Moses was born, there's a decree, there's decree. Let's go to Exodus chapter 1, verse 20. And therefore God deal with well with the midwife, and the people multiply and work very mighty. And it came to pass, because the midwife feared God, that he made them houses. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save. So we see that Pharaoh charged people again as far as his charged midwife, but midwife fear God, but he charged another group of people. And those group of people, at that time when Moses was born, this charge or this comment of Pharaoh to let a male child of Israelite to be killed, the decree was at full force when Moses was born. So because of time, I will not give us the detail of all this, but I want to come to that Ellen White compared this, and I wanted to see that the event at Pentecost so there are characteristics of second coming that we can see in this line. So I want to begin from the end, then come backward. So at Red Sea, let's go to Exodus chapter 14, verse 10 through 12. Exodus 14, verse 10 through 12. And Exodus 14, it is here. It says, and it says unto Moses, because there was no grape in Israel, art thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore art thou dealt thus with us, to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone, that we may save the Egyptian? For it had been better for us to save the Egyptian than that we should die in the wilderness. So, Ellen White will comment on this, that they were disappointed at Red Sea, GC 457. Let's go to GC 457, paragraph 2. It is saying, the history of ancient Israel is a striking illustration of the past experience of the Adventist people. God led his people in the Advent movement, even as he led the children of Israel from Egypt. In the great disappointment, their faith was tested, as was that of the Hebrew at the Red Sea. So here, Ellen White is still connected Red Sea with 1844. So let us go to Exodus chapter 19. Exodus 19. So in Exodus chapter 19, from verse 16 to verse 20, I I wanted to see something from there. And it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightning and a thin cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the nether part of the mount. And Mount Sinai was altogether as a smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. So let us go to PP 339 before I comment on this. PP 339 paragraph 1, it says, the people of Israel, because of their sinfulness, were forbidden to approach the mount when God was about to descend upon it to proclaim his law, lest they should be consumed by the burning glory of his presence. If such manifestation of his power mark the place chosen for the proclamation of God's law, how terrible must be his tribunal when he comes for the execution of this sacred statute. How will those who have trampled upon his authority endure his glory in the great day of final retribution? The terror of Sinai was to present to the people the sense of the judgment. The sound of trumpets commune Israel to meet with God. The voice of the archangel and the trumps of God shall commune for the whole earth, both the living and the dead, to the presence of their judge. The Father and the Son, attended by a multitude of angels, were present upon the mount. At the great judgment day, Christ will come in the glory of his Father with his angel. He shall then sit upon the thrones of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all nations. So, 340 paragraph 1. 340 paragraph 1, the same book, PV. It says, never seen man was created had there been witness such as manifestation of divine power as when the law was proclaimed from Sinai. The earth shook, the heaven also dropped at the presence of God. Even Sinai itself was moved at the presence of God, the God of Israel. Amid the most terrific convulsion of nature, the voice of God like a trumpet was heard from the cloud. The mountain was shaken from base to summit, and the host of Israel, fallen and trembling with terror, lay upon their faces upon the earth. He whose voice then shook the earth as declared, yet one more, I shake not the earth only, but also heaven. So, in these two paragraphs, there are things that I want us to note down. So here we have Exodus 19:16 through 20. We have PP 299 and then 304. No. 340. 399, yeah. 339. 339. 339 and then 340, paragraph 1. And I think that so things. So we are Mount Sinai, and then we see the Lord descend. So it came with a cloud. And as it's coming, so there's a shaking. And then Mount Sinai quakes. Another why I say that this one represents sense of judgment. And then there's a sound of trumpet. And now Alan White began to compare that this one here presents the day that Christ will come to execute the same law that when he came down here to proclaim, that the execution and the proclamations of the message of the law, Alan White said that the equal, that Christ came with a cloud, with thick darkness, and then we see that there's a voice that summoned Israel to come before the mountain. And when it was coming, there's a shaking, and this shaking Mountain Sinai was shaken, and this sound of trumpet here, Ellen White compare with the voice. With the voice of archangel. And at the same time, when God came down from the mountain, we see that in PP 304, says, so not 304 but 303. 303 paragraph 1. Okay, thank you. 303 paragraph 1 says, soon after the encampment at Sinai, Moses was called up into the mountain to meet with God. Alone he climbed the steams and raked paths and drew near to the cloud that marked the place of Jehovah present. Israel was now to be taken into a close and peculiar relation to the Most High, to be incorporated as a church and a nation. Under the government of God, the message to Moses for the people was. So the blow is the message of Moses to the people. But what I wanted to see from here, another thing that Alan White commented, that Israel at this point is going to be incorporated as a what? As a church and as a nation under the government of who? Government of God. So, in summary, the point that I wanted to see from here, based on this message that we have seen from the message of Moses, that the message was that deliverance, that are going to be delivered from the captivity of Egyptian, and the deliverance that God has chosen Moses to deliver them. It was a message from here as the present truth. But when we came in this history, we see that one thing that I did not mark, and it's a very important point, when you go to Matthew 25, you see that at midnight there was a boy's cry, and sleeping virgin wake up. But one thing we see that there's a procession, and in the time of Christ, we see this procession moved to Jerusalem. But when we came here, we see that they begin their journey from Egypt here at Passover, and then there's a procession that's going on to other heading to Red Sea. And other things in this history, God came down, or Christ came down with an invisible sign, and that visible sign was a cloud. And this cloud was a pillar. Eh? Oh, sorry. And this cloud was a pillar of what? It was a pillar of fire. And when you go to Genesis, to Exodus chapter 13, verse 21 to 22. 13. Yeah, 13 verse 20. And they took their journey from Sekos and encamped in Anthems in the edge of the wilderness. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, and to go by day and night. So we see that the pillar of cloud to lead them the way, by night it was a pillar of fire. And this cloud here, or these pillars, which are pillar of cloud by day and pillar of fire by night, were the one that leading them in their journey from the beginning until they came to Red Sea. And Ellen White comment on this in PP 315. PP 315, paragraph 3. And I will read in the middle. And the mighty miracle in Egypt and a Red Sea were designed to establish faith in him as the invisible, all-powerful helper of Israel, the only true God, and the desire for some visible manifestation of his presence had been granted in the pillar of cloud and of fire that guide the horse. So here we see that Ellen White give us that this pillar of cloud and pillar of fire, it was a visible what? Who have read the quotation? Visible? Manifestation of what? Of his presence. And 283, PP 283, whereby Ellen White he still comment on the same thing. Okay, thank you. 287, not 283, sorry. 290, paragraph 3. Sorry for that. PP 290, paragraph 3. It says, the cloud that was a wall of darkness to the Egyptian was to the Hebrew a great flood of light, illuminating the whole camp and shedding brightness upon the face before them. So the dealing of providence bring to the unbelieving darkness and despair, while to the trusting soul they are full of light and peace. The path where God lead the way by light through the desert or the sea, but it is a safe path. So we see that this pillar of cloud was the one that leading them in the night and the day as they move from Egypt to the Red Sea. So, as we have seen from G. Ellen White has confirmed that this one here, Pentecost, that there is some characteristic of the second coming of Christ, whereby she connected them, that cloud, and then shaking or quaking, and then we see that there's a sound of trumpet, which he say that it is equal with the voice of archangel that call for the what? For the whole earth, dead and the living at what? At the second coming of who? Of Christ. So that's the comparison that I want us to see from here, and to acknowledge once again, this is not the reform line that we used to start before. And we all know that the reform line of Christ begins from here, 4 BC, 34, and other waymarks 70 and 100 AD. And the reason I'm bringing this, because I want to consider the way that Alan White make application here and the comparison that she made with Passover and all these things, and then she compare this with this. And I'm bringing this one to compare this with this, and then 1863 to make some point. So, can we pray? Most gracious Father in heaven, we give thanks to thee, dear Lord, for protection as you lead us through our studies. We pray that may thy Holy Spirit press all this truth that you want us to understand at the end of the world. As we have seen through the line of Moses, you have given a unified message from the beginning to the end. You deliver them from the hand of Egyptians, and you sanctify them as a peculiar people, a holy nation, and you incorporated them as your church. And that line teaches us important truth to our time. Be with us and guide us. In this number pray, in Jesus' name we pray and believe. Amen.